Welcome back to the Tea Time Podcast. My name is Tori. I am your host. Thanks for listening in today. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Actually, I love making these podcasts, and I'm trying on a daily basis to get, new guests, new topics. It's a lot of fun, actually. And I have to give you a little behind the scenes look. Next Wednesday and Thursday, I think I'm recording, 7 different episodes between those 2 days. And I am so freaking excited for some of these guests and some of the topics that we're going to share about, because believe it or not, we are going to touch on a couple things that we have never talked about before and how it relates to our golf game. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So stay tuned, because the next 2 months of episodes are going to be fire. And we're starting off with behind the scenes of the USGA Championship. Today's episode, we have Erin Groeneveld joining us, the USGA Director of Regional Affairs in the Northeast Sector. She's kind of our USGA liaison. She used to be the, women's tournament director at the Arizona Women's Golf Association. That was probably her title. I don't know for sure, but she used to be in charge of all our women's tournaments. And so I have a close relationship with her. Those of you in Florida might have a close relationship to her also, because she worked for the Florida Golf Association most recently, and then she just got promoted or just took a new job at the USGA, which is a big freaking deal. And she wanted to come on the podcast. Well, I asked her, let's be honest. I was like, come on the podcast, because she was working the U.S. Senior Women's Amateur Championship at Troon a couple weeks ago. And I said, come on the podcast, give us like a behind the scenes look at what it takes to run these championships, because we know it's a lot, and I want to see like what's going on back there. I'm like, I actually was a starter on the practice rounds. So on Thursday and Friday of the championship, I went in and I was a starter on the first tee. And just going into like their USGA offices, they set up shop in the club at Troon, was like, what are you guys doing? Like, I want to know. Like, there were so many desks, so many like look to be important people. Okay. And I wanted to know all the things. So we had to have Erin on. I can't wait to get into this episode. But before we get into the episode, it is about that time where I am getting messages that are saying something of the sort. I am coming to Scottsdale. I am traveling to Phoenix. I am coming to Arizona to play golf. What recommendations do you have for me to play? Like, what courses should we play? I'm getting those messages a lot, which makes sense. We're now in season, and it's like, hello, golf vacations to Scottsdale. I get it. So this is what I have 4 courses that I always tell people to play. These are my top 4 recommendations. Are you ready? First off, we're going to say Papago. I love Papago. Okay. It is my favorite. I'm going to say, I'm talking about my 4 favorite courses right now. It is definitely in my top 4. It holds a very special place in my heart. That's where we run the Desert Classic. The clubhouse was newly remodeled, and actually the golf course was newly remodeled. And it's just a fun place to be. Not only play 18 holes, but go lunch or dinner after. They usually have live music. It's just a really cool environment. That's where ASU is. That's where their home base is, the ASU golf team. And you got the buttes right there. I mean, you've seen the pictures. It's gorgeous. So Papago, for sure, one of my top 4 courses. And the price range is going to be probably for greens fees, cart, range balls, the whole 9 yards. It's probably going to be between $75 and I bet hikes up to about $200 per person in those really desirable time frames in season. All right, so that's going to be the price for that. Next up is Camelback. Camelback is one of my favorite places to play. I actually played yesterday there, and it's always in beautiful shape. They have 2 courses there, Ambiente and Padre. I usually only say Camelback Ambiente, but I gotta say, I love playing Padre too, and it's in great shape. Padre gets a bad rap, but either of those courses are very fun to play. And again, you go in for lunch after you're around. I've never been there for dinner, but can vouch for lunch. It's a great freaking menu. And I'm sorry, that's important to me. I want to have a nice lunch after, all right? And it is walkable. And I do see people walking there all the time. I've never walked it before. It seems like it's a flat walk, but I've heard that it's a 7-mile walk, and I believe it because there's some holes that you have a lot of space in between, green to tee box, but it is walkable. And Papago is totally walkable too, by the way. All right, next up, Mountain Shadows. Mountain Shadows is a par 3 course. It is in the heart of Paradise Valley. So you're right on Camelback Mountain. It is always in stunning shape, absolutely beautiful. You have beautiful views. And again, since I'm having this like food after golf theme, it has the best cheeseburger I have ever ate in the valley at their restaurant after. Not their restaurant, it's like the hotel restaurant. Mountain Shadows is connected to a hotel. I'm not sure what hotel it is. I'm such a loser. I don't know what hotel is right there, but go there, eat the cheeseburger, and you're welcome. It was absolutely delicious. Anyways, don't frown on it because it's a par 3 course, because it would be an easy course to play after your morning 18. Like if you want to put in two rounds, it would be a really fun late afternoon round to play. And it's tricky. Well, I'll say this. You're going to go there thinking that you're going to shoot really well because it's a par 3. I mean, what can go wrong? No, it's a tricky little course. It really is. And it's always in beautiful shape. So I highly recommend it, especially if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner, this is an amazing spot to go play because it's not going to be overwhelming. Again, you're going to have the views. It's beautiful. And it's a par 3. So you're going to have a great time regardless. All right. So I highly recommend Mountain Shadows. And finally, what I think is the quintessential desert course in the state of Arizona. In my opinion, the most beautiful desert course in the state is Quintero. Quintero is about a 45-minute drive from Phoenix and Scottsdale, okay? So you need to plan ahead of time because it is quite a hike to get up there, but it is absolutely worth it. It is the most stunning desert course in Arizona, okay? It far surpasses True North, Greyhawk, Wichita. What are some other? The Boulders? No. It eats those courses for breakfast. It is stunning. So it is absolutely worth the drive. And I haven't been up there. Gosh, it's probably been over 2 years since I've been up there. But I assume that their restaurant game and after golf beer or, cocktail hour is probably on par because it is very busy there. So those are my 4 courses I recommend. Now, I didn't go over prices. Camelback Beyonce is always going to be more expensive than Padre. And I would say it's going to hike between $200 and $300 per person for greens fees. Padre is probably going to be $100 less. So whatever on Beyonce's running, Padre is going to be a good $100 less. But don't frown on Padre because it is a fun course. I think you'll really enjoy it. Mountain Shadows, gosh, I don't know how much they charge it. I bet it doesn't get over $100 in season. That's my guess. Quintero is going to run you, if you are going in prime season on a good tee time, it will be over $200 for sure. But I would imagine you would get a good deal if you went early morning or later afternoon. You probably would get a better deal there. Now, my 2 suggestions, if you're really looking for a good deal, is the Raven and Legacy. Both are in South Phoenix. Okay, it's not the most scenic drive when you get either of these courses. They're actually right next to each other. But they are much less expensive and they're very fun courses to play. You have views of South Mountain while you're down there. And, it's more of 2 local tracks that most of the locals play, but they are very fun courses to play. So if you're looking for a little bang for your buck, the Raven and Legacy, again, they're right next to each other down in South Phoenix. And then finally, the months to come play, December, January, probably February, March, April are the highest played months. Stay away from October and the first half of November. I would say October 1st to Thanksgiving, stay away from there because you have overseed season in October when most of the courses are shut down completely. And then once they open, they go to cart path only. And cart path only is a total fucking pain in the ass. All right. And not only is it cart path only, but the reason for that is because the course is super wet, super soggy. The grass is really grown out. They're trying to grow and mature this brand new grass. So they're not cutting it very short. So you are getting zero roll. And a lot of times your ball is getting plugged in the fairways because it's so wet. It's just not the most fun experience. So from October 1st till Thanksgiving, I would stay away. I would totally stay away. I'd say maybe Thanksgiving week is your first time where you might not get cart path only, most of the courses. And then finally, the month that I think is the best deal in Phoenix, Scottsdale is September. If you're willing to play in the higher temperatures, then September is an amazing time to come because the golf courses are in incredible shape and you're going to pay a fraction of what you pay in season prices. And again, the courses are in really good shape. So you're not going to be dealing with July where they are all punched and getting aerated and usually the greens are not good. August and really September are amazing months to play golf. And really, when you book early morning tee time, the temperatures are not that bad for the majority of the round, and you're in a cart, I would think. So it's not that bad. So those are my suggestions. If you're coming to visit Phoenix or Scottsdale, you'll notice that a lot of the courses I suggest are very centrally located, very close to Old Town Scottsdale. To me, I don't really get a rise out of Greyhawk, True North, the Boulders, Wikipaw. They're very popular, but to me, I don't know. They are what they are. So I'll leave it at that. So that is my summary of what I would recommend to you if you did message me and said, hey, I'm coming to Arizona. Where should I play? That is exactly where I would tell you to go. All right, let's get into today's episode, Behind the Scenes of a USGA Championship with Erin Groeneveld.
Next up on the number one tee.
Well, hello, and welcome back to your virtual tea time. My name is Tori, and today we have Erin Groeneveld back.
Woohoo.
I wanted to actually say from Florida, but no, you're in the Northeast. Where are you up in the Northeast specifically? Where's the home base?
Home base. So I live in Morristown, New Jersey. My office is in Far Hills, New Jersey.
And you're the Director of Regional Affairs for the Northeast section, region.
Region. Yeah.
Are you loving it over there?
I love it.
How long has it been? Because when was the last time you were on the pod? It was last spring, maybe?
So I think the last time I was on was like maybe January of this year. And I hadn't moved yet. So I was still living in Florida. I moved up in the first part of May.
Have you ever lived in the Northeast before?
My dad was stationed in Groton, Connecticut and Kittery, Maine when I was very little. I don't really remember a lot of that, but...
And then did you come to Arizona?
Yeah.
Did you spend most of your life in Arizona?
Most of my life in Arizona. We went Arizona, Florida, Arizona, and then I went back to Florida and then went up to the Northeast.
Oh my God. So she's lived most of her life in Arizona and Florida, and now you're in the overcast, beautiful skies.
New Jersey.
The Northeast.
Hello. I will say, I keep telling everybody, New Jersey is not Newark. Like, Newark's not great. Maybe I'll get in trouble for saying that.
Newark is the sixth borough.
Yeah. I'm like North Jersey.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of great places in New Jersey. I mean, I'm from Rochester, New York, so I'm just talking about the general gloom.
It hasn't hit yet. Like, we're still like sunny, kind of fall, but like we haven't gotten the gray.
Fall's really nice. You know, you're actually
not yet a Jets fan.
Yeah, she's thinking, oh, I can't wait for the holidays. Just wait when this slush is coming up your
right.
Fall quickly turns to winter.
Winter. Yeah, it's mostly January, February, March where you feel like you want to jump in the freezing cold oceans and lakes and be done with everything.
I will say I was up there in February when I was looking for a place to live, and the temperature was like -2 and the feels like was like -11, but there was no snow on the ground. So I wasn't angry. I was okay. I just had a lot of layers on.
Adam's here. Hi, Adam.
Oh, yeah, he's here.
Hey, Adam.
What's going on?
Yeah, I think this is my second pod with Miss Fancy Pants here.
Is it?
I actually think it's your third.
Might be third.
Yeah, it's your third.
I guess we're like connected.
Yep. It's
We're connected.
I mean, and I almost called Abe to finalize it, but
Abe was just up. Were you at the AC Utah showdown?
he was not. That's actually
Oh, is that a sore subject? Sorry.
So, but he is going to the Northern this weekend.
Supposedly.
And I just asked him, I said,
Supposedly, are you going to change your mind at the
no,
last second?
he is not going to change his mind. But I said, hey, have you hit balls at all this week?
No, we're shut down.
I know.
We're
We're in
overseed.
We're in overseed season. So yeah, there's rare pickings out there. But you were saying the other day that, sometimes just going in without hitting balls for a couple weeks sometimes works out.
Sometimes it can.
Yeah.
Sometimes that nasty Rust-Oleum shows its face, though, too.
And you guys are playing up at Oak Creek Country Club. That's a fun place.
Oak Creek, pretty cool place.
Yeah. So anyone that's going to maybe visit Sedona in the near future, I mean, Oak Creek Country Club is my favorite course up there to play. What's the other one up there? I have played it. The one that's
Seven Canyons, probably
Seven
the
Canyon.
big one.
Yeah, and it is beautiful, but I enjoy Oak Creek better.
I would agree. I like Oak Creek's layout is just, I think, better overall. I think you can score a little bit better at Oak Creek.
Yeah.
I think Seven Canyons is
A little penal off the desert.
well, it's like designed so you can see all the beauty, but to design that then makes the layout of the course a little awkward.
Funky.
Hey, listen, some of us are there for the picturesque and the calmness of the mountains
The
and the
magic
rocks, okay?
red rocks.
The magic
to
red
keep you
rocks
calm
that
on the golf course.
undeniably have vortexes in them. We're not here to score all the time. Who cares about the score?
know
Of
what?
the three people in the room, I figured you'd be the last one to make that last goal.
Well, that's what we're going in that with that. We're going into this weekend with that mental state, right, Adam? You're going to go in there.
Fun.
You're going to take in all those good Red Rock vibes.
That's right.
Whatever happens,
Are you
happens.
going to go see a healer before you go out on the golf
No,
course?
stop.
I'm not going that far.
My God. I would spend a decent amount of money to get a healer to be the caddy for the weekend. And just really try and, get in there.
Maybe I will try. Maybe we will. Maybe
You know
it'll
what?
happen.
Do it for the content.
Do it for
Adam.
do it for the experience.
The experience.
Okay, so Erin's here because Arizona hosted the USGA Senior Women's Amateur Championship. And I think I'm going on like my third podcast episode talking about this championship. So the listeners might be like, can you please stop? No, this is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Maybe we'll spread them out a little bit, but yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
So, Erin, you were working the event.
Yes.
So how are you working the event?
So this particular event, I came in as the Regional Affairs Director representation. We typically attend the championships that are in our region. Mike Sweeney had a family commitment that he had to take care of. So he called me up and said, hey, do you want to go home for a week? And I said, yeah, I sure do.
Yeah.
So-
I actually kind of assumed that was the thing. Like they knew you were from Arizona, so that they found a position for you to
essentially.
because they knew that you'd want to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a unique situation or experience this year being a regional affairs director, as in the past when I would go to championships and I was on the rules committee. My dad asks me all the time, he's like, what do you do at these tournaments now that you're not running them? And I said, remember all those years I got report cards home that said Erin talks too much in class? He's like, yeah. I said, I get paid to talk to people, Dad. So when I'm in my regional affairs role, our job is really there to be a liaison for the committee members, our volunteers, the rules officials, make sure that they have what they need, make sure that they get the information they need, that they are kind of upholding their end of the bargain, showing up on time, fulfilling the roles that they've been assigned, and just making sure everything's kind of copacetic. And then we host an evening social for them after the rules committee, because these volunteers are doing this all on their own dime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't pay them. They come to 3 or 4 championships a year, all their airfare, all their hotel,
All on them.
all of that's on them. It's their own time. They have to maintain educational requirements. That's all also on their own time. We try to help with some of the educational requirements. They can attend one rule school kind of on us, but that's a lot of commitment from them. So we try to, I know it's not much to say, oh, we hosted you a cocktail hour, but it's something. It's something, right?
They get a little bit out of it, but let's tell the people about how many volunteers-ish show up to these things and, how many tournament committee members and et cetera.
Yeah.
Give them a better kind of top-down.
typically at a championship, you're going to range anywhere from 30 to 40 rules officials. And these are the specialized volunteers that have the education requirements, the certification. They've done this before, and they are, ranging from anything to starting on the first tee to at the end of the championship when we have the final match, they're the rules official walking with the group. In fact, Jerry Glover, who is one of our local guys here, got the final match. So he was the official at the final match. Yep.
Oh, look at Jerry.
Yeah.
There you go, Jer.
Jerry's a big deal.
Yeah.
He is. Jerry's done a lot. He's come a long way in a short amount of time. He's been a USGA committee member. I think this is his second year.
And he's always happy to be out there. He makes relationships. He forms relationships with people. So he's saying hi to you, calling you by your name. He loves it out there.
Yeah. And most of them do. Most of them, I've yet to run into a committee member that's angry about being at a national championship. I mean, they do it because they love it. So it's fun for them. It's fun for us. I love getting to see them and work with them. And then outside of the rules committee, the host club gets a lot more volunteers than 40. They could range anywhere from hundreds to, I've never seen a smaller committee than like 75. And it can all depend on what's needed at the club. At the U.S. Women's Mid-Am, that was in Pennsylvania just a few weeks ago, they needed shuttle drivers because it was a 36-hole facility with 2 separate clubhouses. Players had to park at one clubhouse, get to another clubhouse. Dining was at one side versus the golf course was at another. So they had to get a shuttle volunteers. So, depending on what's needed at the club, that kind of sets the tone for what they need from a club standpoint.
But you could say anywhere from, say, 100 participants in setting up an event upwards to 300-400.
Yeah. And when you're getting to the opens,
that's a lot more.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You're probably looking at 350 from the rules committee down to the parking lot attendants. Yep. There's a lot of people, and most of those roles are volunteer roles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when the USGA goes into looking at venues for these championships, because do you know off the top of your head how many championships there are?
There are 15.
15 championships that are run from May to September, October-ish.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. That's a lot of, these championships are a big, I don't want to say ordeal, but a big production.
They are. Our team, so Tracy Parsons was our championship director at the women's senior this year. She's made, 6 or 7 site visits out here over the last couple years. Mm-hmm. And then she comes in a week and a half before the championship even starts, before registration.
Yeah.
Which is usually 2 days before the practice round. So she's here for a solid 2.5 weeks.
Oh, yeah. I believe it.
Yeah. And she's meeting daily with the agronomist. She's meeting with the club staff. She's meeting with the volunteer chair from the club. She's meeting with the weather station people. And she has these meetings daily. And it starts probably 4 or 5 days before registration. And she meets daily with them until, and every day certain events have fallen off of the schedule, right? Like player dinner, that's done. We don't have to talk about that anymore. Mm-hmm. But we have the rules committee meeting and dinner coming up. So they got to talk about that. Daily setups for what are we expecting weather throughout the week. Every day that changes. Every hour that changes. We get hourly updates from an on-site meteorologist.
Mm-hmm. So that was probably an easy meeting.
Yeah,
being in Arizona.
It's hot.
Opposed to, remind me where the men's Mid-Am was,
Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
They appeared to have a lot of rain delays this year.
They did. They had a lot of rain delays up there.
What goes on when you just, luck of the draw, you get these horrible weather periods?
So it depends on the championship director, kind of how the flow of a weather delay will go. But typically what happens is the meteorologist is talking to our championship director and they're saying, hey, we have alert levels, right? You have alert 1, 2, 3, 4. And each one of those alerts comes with its own set of standards and procedures that go with it. And once you hit a certain alert level, then it kind of becomes everybody's paying attention, right? Once we hit like alert 3, other people have responsibilities at that point. We have to get rules people in the right spot to get players, to their evacuation vehicles. If players are close enough that they're coming into the clubhouse, you've got volunteers and committee members that have to try and escort them in the right spot. Because most championships, you're walking, right? Mm-hmm. Your Mid-Ams, you're walking. So getting players to a safe space, whether that's an evacuation vehicle or we're getting them into the clubhouse takes some coordination and effort, right? And that usually starts with the championship director will get on the horn with what we call rovers, which are committee members that are stationed periodically throughout the course. And they're not assigned to a group. They're not assigned to a hole. They're assigned to a section. And when we get to a certain alert level where we're ready to suspend play, the championship director, they kind of get on and say, hey, we're in alert 3 or 4. Radio communications need to stop. So everybody kind of gets off the radio. And championship director comes on and does a countdown. We're going to blow the horn in 10 seconds. And they'll do a countdown. We blow the horn. There's different horn signals for, is it immediate because it's dangerous? Is it, hey, you can finish the hole, but then we're done? So there's different signals, and they'll let you know what the signal is to blow for. And then we proceed getting players off the golf course. Sometimes you hold in place and they just sit in the evacuation vehicles until it's safe to come out because it's only going to be 20 minutes. And it would take us 35 to get you up and back out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then other times, like at Sleepy Hollow, it turns into like 3 hours, and there's just nothing you can do about it. When there's lightning in the area, it's just, you got to get them off the golf course.
Yeah, it did not look fun.
So come back to and talk about for a minute the amount of committee members, because we broke down how many volunteers there can be, that range. But how about the committee members and their duties?
So the committee members are going to be those specialized rules officials. And there's, ranging anywhere from 30 to 40 of those. And, in your first couple of days, when we're doing registration, we haven't necessarily hit the practice rounds yet. Some of them come in early and they sit at some of the registration tables and they'll talk about pace of play with the players as they come through, or they'll talk about, any of the special local rules that might be in effect, or conditions of competition that might be in effect, a 1-ball rule, the footwear local rule or condition of competition. They'll talk about that with the players, make sure they're aware of it. For the women's senior, they're talking about the cart policy because that's not normal. We don't normally allow carts. So they're going to spend time talking about, it's the 1-seat policy. So Tori could have ridden while Kim was walking, but if Kim hopped in a cart, Tori needed to be walking. So vice versa, 1 seat.
Remind everybody the penalty for that.
It's 2 strokes.
Well,
just for one violation.
True.
Yeah.
And we're talking about those kind of local rules put into place. At this championship, they had a rule put in place about the yardage books.
Yeah, talk about that one.
So that's new at all of our championships this year is...
so that was at every championship.
So the green reading books, you can't use the green reading books. So when you're out playing and you're in the fairway or you're off the tee, you can look at your notes. You can look at any of the information that's in your yardage book. Once you play your approach shot to the green, you can no longer look at that green reading material.
Yeah, once your ball is at rest on the green, no more yardage books.
So sadly, I have not played in the USGA this year. But you really put this in place for the Open and everything else?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't know that it was in place for the Opens, but for all the amateur events, it was in place.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a while before something like that can go into effect at the Open level.
They're not going to allow that one.
What was... I know what the reasoning was for it, to help with pace of play, I assume. Yeah. But is this something that we'll probably be seeing more of? Is this going to be every year? Was this just being tested out this year?
That's a great question. I would assume that it will be something that will continue going forward, unless they get some kind of feedback from the players that really compels them not to do it. I think it's something we're going to see going forward. It is for pace of play. There's also the element of, or the thought process that part of the game is your skill to be able to read those greens and understand how to work around the greens without extra tools, right?
We could make a whole pod just on this topic, but I bet they're going to do a pretty big study as far as does it save time? And I bet it doesn't.
You probably are right. I know that was one of the reasons we now allow the distance measuring devices is
to speed it up. And now we're finding out that it's slowing it down.
Yeah, I mean,
is it slowing it down?
There's some.
I think it ebbs and flows.
Have shown it slows it down.
Yeah,
because they start shooting other things.
Yeah, I can remember being at a U.S. women's state team competition as a captain. I was there representing Arizona, and they asked players in the groups, their caddies essentially, to carry a GPS marker to track how long they were in different places on the golf course. And they were allowed to use distance measuring devices. And it was they put the local rule in effect that lets you use it. And they were trying to test how Did it really hinder play? Did it make it go slower? Because we have data on what it's like without it. And they use these devices to get actual data on how long people were standing using these devices. And
so how about a quick poll? Should they be allowed? Green reading.
Green reading books?
Yes or no? Right now.
Oh, gosh.
Ooh,
Come on.
Man.
This is a quick show.
No.
We don't have all day.
No.
So you like this rule? You prefer it to stay in place?
I don't mind it.
You don't mind the rule?
I don't mind the rule. No. I got used to it, and I looked at the green reading area of the yardage book, starting on the tee and then in the fairway, and then, you discuss it with your player, and then it was like, okay, put it away.
Okay.
And you?
What's your thought?
I don't like them. I frown upon them, but I don't think they should be outlawed.
I don't think they should be outlawed completely.
Because to me, you're really splitting a hair when you say, hey, we're going to give you distances in this book that show you how far this bunker is. And in those books, as you've probably seen, there's also slope indications that, hey, this plays down 8 yards or up 4 yards. You can get that information, but you can't get something that shows you what general direction the green slopes.
I mean,
to me, that's splitting a hair.
Well, we're getting that information. They're just saying you can't look at it while you're on the green, while your ball's on the green.
I know. And so again, the only way to justify that is to say it speeds up play. So, and it probably does.
I mean, I can certainly testify to, when you're, and I just had this a couple weeks ago when I took a match at the women's mid-am. We would make up 3 minutes on the hole. Then we would get to the green and we would lose a minute and a half, and they weren't even using the green reading material. So I can't even imagine what would happen if they were staring at books.
Well, imagine this. Imagine they're staring at their book and they're doing aim point.
Yeah, I mean
someone in this room petitioned the USGA to disallow aim point.
That is not true. I just don't want to put it out there, but meaning like I didn't actually write something to the USGA, but I mean, it's a suggestion.
It was a strongly worded suggestion with foul words in it.
I thought this person was wearing an orange shirt.
I don't know if it was foul words, but I got to say, I think I got lucky this past week because I played with all players that were just so fast. I mean, they were.
Yeah, I know.
I was impressed.
Practice round. Your one practice round, you had Gigi Higgins in the group with you.
So fun.
So Gigi was one of my players down in Florida, and she is a Spitfire, and she's like Kim. Yeah. If I put Gigi out first, chances were I was going to get a conversation from the golf shop that was like, hey, can you slow your first group down a little bit?
No, we were flying at some points. I mean, and during tournament rounds, during stroke play rounds, we were just hour and 45 minutes for a 9. It was great. So anyway, now that we're on, I do want to get back to venues because I'm very curious of venues, but let's wrap up kind of committee members and volunteers. You said that you have your daily kind of championship director meetings. So I assume this is when the event starts.
So those were the things I was talking about a little earlier. She starts probably 3 or 4 days before, maybe 4 or 5 days before registration. And she's meeting daily. She probably has 3 daily meetings that she goes to, which are the host club committee and the club staff. And then she's meeting with the agronomist and the weather team.
Okay. So each day that might vary depending on what things, like you said.
Correct. What's
on the evening
lineup.
Party was done on Friday, so we're not having a meeting about that.
Yeah.
So once you get into championship play, is there a head rules official that you're meeting with every day too?
So there's someone from our staff that's representing the head rules as like the lead rules person. And that for this last week, it was Todd Stice. Todd actually just came on staff with us from Central Links, which is Kansas. He was their rules and comp director, a longtime rules and comp director and PGA professional, and very good with the rules. So he came on our staff a few months ago. I think this was his first time being the lead rules official, and I think he did a great job. I think there weren't a lot of rules issues out there. While I won't say the course is easy or simple, it's a simple mark. There's not a lot. I mean, the desert, we're not marking that as a penalty area. We're not. There's like 2 or 3 actual ponds on that golf course.
But that's interesting that you said it's a simple mark. So what does that mean? If you're playing a more traditional course, what are things you're marking?
So the penalty areas, right? We really have to make sure that we're marking penalty areas, 1, correctly, whether they're red versus yellow. And then 2, you have to really kind of look at those from the standpoint of the player, right? So let's say you have a penalty area that, Papago's a great example. There's a penalty area behind, I think, number 10 green off to the left. And then 11T goes over that penalty area, right? So
but it plays different.
Right. So if you you could take that yellow line all the way down around close to 10 green. But then if I hit an errant shot on 10 green and I bounce left and I end up in that penalty area and it's marked yellow, I'm basically going back to where I last played from, or I have to go on the other side of that penalty area to try and hit back to 10 green. So you have to make sure those transitions make sense from every angle, right? So when you have more of those on the golf course, it takes longer. You have to talk about them. Because once you put paint down, it's hard to get it back up, right?
Yeah.
And I've had to green out penalty areas before.
Okay, that's a good. I never thought about that.
Yeah, marking them's tough, but think about, I mean, shit, you still got a lot of cactus, a lot of bushes out there.
Right. And so it's not easy from a player's standpoint, but from a marking on the rules of golf, we're not putting a lot of paint down on Troon Country Club. Now, we have to be well aware of what's going to happen in the desert. Lots of unplayables, lots of lost balls, that kind of situation. But from a putting paint on the golf course, it's pretty easy.
Okay. Well, before we get into more venue stuff, I actually talked to a very good player recently, and she goes, played pretty easy. What was your thoughts? You probably can't say anything negative.
I didn't actually look at, we have stats on and it's all relative because it's stats in relation to the rest of the days of the tournament, right? So I know number 14 played pretty hard for a couple people. I think number 9 played hard one day. Setup is changing, right? The hole locations are changing. The tee locations are changing. And, the fewer people you have in the field, the less data you have to go against. So as we move through match play, the field gets cut in half every time. We still collect that data. It's just not as much data. So,
obviously the USGA has all this data because they save it.
Yeah.
But you're saying that they do look at that and say, hey, how did we do relative to years prior?
Not years prior, but just the rest of the days of the championship. Because it'd be one thing to compare, like if we were at Troon Country Club last year, how did it play? But for us to compare it to last year's senior women's venue, you can do a somewhat of a comparison, but it's not the same golf course. So it gets hard to say, oh, we played harder or better, or it was an easier setup, because the courses aren't necessarily apples to apples. But
no course is, but that's what you have ratings for. That's what slope is for.
Right. But since we're playing gross, we don't really use that. But
it still matters.
I mean, it does you can compare some things. And so they'll look over, last year's winner or medalist, right? Stroke play medalist, their score may have been 3 under and this year's may have been 2 over.
Yeah, I can tell you from looking at those scores, that comment of it played easy does not apply.
Well, I did think it was an interesting comment that she made because of that. The stroke play.
She didn't, whoever that was, and I think I know who it was, but whoever it was, they didn't finish in the red.
I think she was just saying it played easy. Other than the greens being tricky, fairways are fairly wide. There's no rough. Fairway bunkers didn't come into play.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't hit it sideways into the desert.
And I think for a lot of players that don't play desert golf, they come out and they see all this wide open space, right? You can see the sky. There's not a lot of trees. There's a lot of green space in front of you. And the contrast between the brown of the desert and the green of the grass makes that fairway look wider. And so I think perceptually they go, oh man, this is easy. And it's, you're right. They're in this particular demographic, they don't spray it super wild a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You get, some of them have a bad shot or someone's having a bad day, but as a whole, their dispersion is not that wide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why this course works for them. When they have the men's mid-am out here in a few years, it's going to be a little different.
Is it going to be a Troon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be fun to watch.
I can tell you exactly what they're going to do. They're going to narrow in those fairways and they're going to tuck those pins.
And they're going to grow that rough.
Grow out whatever rough they can.
Yeah.
But
I think this is a good segue to venues. But what she was saying, I think, is valid in that the Arizona courses are not tough enough to generally host these scale and these types of events because they aren't. They are not as hard as other ones. But the scores, what I'm saying, it did not reflect that. You didn't have you didn't have 5-10 women under par. You didn't have 2-3 under winning matches.
Yeah. I mean, wind did come into effect.
Wind too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends. I mean, especially down here in the desert, you're not going to get a lot of elevation changes. Now, 14 is, that's a unique situation, that elevation change. Most of our courses don't have the kind of elevation changes that they have in the Midwest and over to the East Coast. I mean, I walked out on Sleepy Hollow and I got to the top of the third hole, and I had to stop and I was like, whew, man, I gotta stop for a second. I can't breathe. Like, I mean, you're down at the Hudson River and then you're
up high.
High.
Okay, so when you were talking about analyzing the data from the holes, are you looking at, okay, wait, this hole's playing really easy, let's toughen it up the next day? Is that what you're looking at? Or
I think it depends on what you want to do, and I think it depends on where we're at in the championship. So for stroke play, stroke play is kind of this unique situation where you're trying to see a separation in the field, right? You want the best players in the field to make it to match play.
Yeah.
So you need to make it hard enough that it separates those players apart, but it can't be so hard that it's beating everybody up, because that ruins your pace of play. Yeah. And players feel dejected. They don't want to, they're angry. Right?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, the USGA does not care about that.
Well,
they want to deject the shit out of you.
Again, I think it depends on your championship director. I also think it depends on the market segment that you're working with, right? Like the men's amateur, the men's mid-amateur. Yeah. It's, they have to really work hard to separate those fields, because from top to bottom, there's not that big of a difference in the players, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas here, you're going to have a little bit, the segment of senior women's golf, while it is a big segment, it's not as big as a men's amateur or even a men's senior, right? So you get much wider dispersions in ability. And so you can maybe go a little softer with the golf course and still get your separation.
Yeah.
And then when you get down to match play, it really comes down to, what is the championship director trying to design out of the players, right? So if for some reason 14, they wanted to try and entice people to try and drive 14, she might move the tee markers up and, maybe bring a little bit closer hole location, so it looks like, oh man, I might be able to reach this. But then there's a lot of stuff in the way, right? So the player has to think that through. And it's all what the championship director is trying to design, right? Because that's a great match play hole. If you go for it and you all of a sudden have a chance at eagle and I played it safe, now I'm trying to get a birdie.
Yeah.
That could be a big swing in the match. And so it's what you're trying to design for the players in the different parts of the championship.
It's interesting. It's like, I would like to be behind the curtain, see what's going on.
Course setup is everything.
Yeah. It is. And, and our course setup at the USGA is dramatically different than what most golf associations have the resources to do. It's not like our championship director every morning from practice round 1, they're out there, each 9 holes has their own hole cutter, and they're with a championship director or Todd Stice, our head rules guy. And the hole cutter's with Tracy, and on the first hole, she'll have a series of those little irrigation flags with her. There's no dots on the greens. She'll go where she wants the practice round that day's hole location. She'll measure it out. She'll, put some balls to it. And when she's comfortable with it, she'll say, okay, you can go ahead and cut that hole. And then she's going to spend the next however long looking at every other hole location for the rest of the week. And she does that every morning on every hole. And sometimes they change hole locations in between rounds from morning to afternoon.
Based on weather.
Based on weather, sometimes, yeah.
They'll see it's blowing too hard or this particular direction, that one doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to use day 4 spin here.
Yeah. But every day she's looking at all the remaining hole locations. And the hole cutter's not cutting a hole until she says, go ahead and cut that.
Nope.
Most golf associations don't have the resources to do that.
No.
Well, let's back up to that. So for qualifiers, is the USGA relying solely on the state association to have a course set up for?
Yeah. So when you're running a qualifier for a USGA championship, you're given some information, right? You're giving a range at the championship. Our par 4s are going to range from this yardage to this yardage. Par 5s will range from this yardage to this yardage. We ask you to try and find something that meets these qualifications. They don't give you a slope and rating to try and hit, because that can get a little cumbersome. But as far as hole location selection, that's up to the AGA. Whether they're a state organization or a regional, they're an allied golf association that's been charged with conducting that qualifier.
Yeah.
They're charged with picking the hole locations and essentially the yardage at the end of the day.
At this point, are venues coming to you, or is it?
It's a good mix. It's a good mix. I mean, there's certainly venues out there that are like, hey, I want to host the US Open. And it's like, well, that's
true.
Okay, let's have that conversation.
Good goal. Anywho.
And that's going to come down to, the Opens are a whole different animal than our amateur championships. You have to have infrastructure to have stands, spectators, other vendors that come in and out. You know, I mean, in LA, they had to build a walkway over the main drag right there because there was no easy way to get from parking to the golf course. And they didn't want to employ a bunch of shuttle drivers that could get stuck in traffic. So they built a walkway.
Wow.
That's not usual. I mean, that's not normal. We don't do stuff like that normally, but you know, you have to look at all that stuff at a venue. Can they host, you know, for example, Troon Country Club? It's a great venue, but for the players' dinner, it probably wasn't so great. All the players were in one room, but the committee members and some host club volunteers had to sit in another room. So it just wasn't big enough.
Yeah, because reminder, you had 250 in that field?
132.
130. So some of these have 250, but anywhere from...
a lot of the men's events will have 2 courses and 250.
Yeah, so anywhere from 130 to 250, plus the caddies, plus the volunteers.
Correct.
Plus staff.
And like sometimes they're allowed, you know, players are allowed to bring a guest. So
yeah, guest plus one.
You know, that number can creep up. So you have to look at all that kind of stuff. And then for most of the women's events, yardage is not a huge deal other than if the course is so long that they don't have yardages to get it enough, you know, short for some of the holes. For the guys, you know, again, a lot of places say they want to host the US Open, but maybe they're just not long enough, right? And you can't do enough to the golf course to counter that.
Most aren't. But now the British Open, the Open, has what's called a rota. The US, I don't know if it was Sweeney or Juan who said that they were thinking about doing that. Did that make any progress as far as narrowing that in and having, we're going to play at these 8-10 venues, rotate? It
is still an item that is being discussed. I don't know that it's made any...
Yeah, no, it's not finalized.
You're overestimating my power and authority and how involved I am in things. I know how big
of a deal you are. You just don't want to give up good shit. And this is the venue to be giving up good shit.
I'm going to be honest, though. I would get bored. Like if it was the same.
Well, that was where
10.
I was going. Was that, hey, you know, is that coming closer to happening? And do you really think that's the right way to go? In my opinion, for a U.S. Open, as many great courses as we have here, I would say no. But that's what they're facing is they're saying, well, hey, look, we only have so many venues that we want to hit California better because, I mean, shit, it was 50 years, 60 years since they were in LA.
It was a long time. Yeah. I don't know that, you know, that's a hard, like from a administrative standpoint, it's nice to know that every 10 years, like I don't really have to think about it, right? I don't have to try and go get a venue. Now, the US Open's a little different. I don't know that it's difficult for us to get a venue to agree to it, whereas it's difficult for us to have a venue that wants it and also meets all the requirements. But I also know that, you know, there's no hesitation on our part if we have the right venue and a good venue to schedule many years out in advance.
Now, I might be on like the wrong side of Twitter, but it's appeared that LA Country Club got a lot of bad press for mostly because there wasn't a lot of fans.
So I think there were parts of LA Country Club. Now, I didn't go to the Open this year. I wasn't there. My dad actually went and Scott McNevin actually went. There were certain holes that it was pretty difficult to get back in there. And so you didn't get a lot of people moving that way. There was also probably not as many tickets sold.
That's the problem.
Again, because the footprint was so small.
Oh, you're saying so... there's only a certain amount of tickets that they could sell. And that's
because the footprint is so small.
It's not because they couldn't sell them out.
Yeah. Now, there were other things going on that, and I have not had any conversations about this. I don't know that any of this is true, but I think what you're probably hearing is on Twitter, there was a lot of rumors going around that the membership of LACC were buying all the tickets.
That's the
I don't think that's true, but I don't know that for a fact.
No, because there was limited sales. They only allowed so many people on property, and so many of them got bought out and or reserved and or held from members. So yeah, that was, and this is not an opinion, this is a fact.
Certainly there is a portion.
That is the least amount of outside participation in the U.S. Open that the U.S. Open's ever seen.
Yeah, and some of that has to do with the footprint. And there are, you know, host clubs they're going to get a ticket package, right? They're going to have some tickets set aside for their members, their high profile clients, their whoever they need. And that's true for other groups as well, right? I mean, you know, Lexus is a partner of ours.
Exactly.
I'm sure they got a couple tickets, you know?
Okay, so let's move off of the U.S. Open and the U.S. Women's Open because those are like big, huge. Okay, let's look more at the AMs and the mid-AMs and the senior AMs.
Is there a U.S. Open, U.S. Women's mid-AM?
Yes.
There is.
Well, let's talk more about those venues.
Someone didn't play in it this year.
Let's talk about those venues. Are you still getting clubs? I would imagine for the USAM you are. It's easier to like clubs are coming to you and saying, I want to host the USAM.
And that's true of other events like US Women's Mid-Am, Stonewall. They really wanted to host that championship. They hosted the men's Mid-Am a few years prior to that, and they enjoyed it. And they wanted to host the women's Mid-Am. They have some ties to it. One of their honorary members is Carol Simple Thompson. Carol's won that championship many, many times. So, some clubs, they have their own emotional tie to a certain championship and they'll want to host it.
Yeah. So I see that you're going to go to Buffalo Country Club. I think it was 2027. What?
For which one?
We're going to try and qualify for that.
For which one?
The U.S. Women's Mid-Am.
Oh, that does exist.
Maybe I'll try and qualify that year.
Well, we got to check our schedules.
Exactly. So, but is that a case where you're thinking, okay, we haven't had a championship up in Western New York in a while. Like, how does Buffalo Country Club come about?
That's a great question. So Buffalo Country Club is actually a pretty prominent club up in that area. It's got a lot of history behind it.
Well, somebody's trying to bash it.
I'm not.
It's a big deal. Come on. Puff your shoulders up a little bit here. Come on.
It is. It's got some history behind it. It's a prominent club up there. It's a great venue. And it could be a situation where they would like to host, and they might want to host another championship. And so it's been kind of okay, well, if we can, take the women's Mid-Am, then we'll try this. And, things like that happen.
Okay. And you don't have to give out names or anything, but just let's throw it out there and see if something sticks. What are some things that could happen at a venue where the USGA is then saying, we can't do it again there?
Good question.
That's a great question.
I know what one is.
Oh, what's that?
Well, for you who's played one, you've played one, but you barely remember it.
I don't even remember it. Yeah.
You've played one. You've now been involved with two.
Yes.
That's enough to say what really made the difference at those events. Like what made them feel big? What made them feel special? It was the atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Who provides that?
I feel like the USGA provides that.
Right. But USGA is all those volunteers.
Yeah.
It's all those members. So when you get a membership, when membership gets engaged at one of these things, it becomes a really big deal and everybody's, amped up, lit up.
That's very true.
When you get a venue that doesn't have that membership engagement.
Yeah. That can get really tough.
You're out.
That can get really tough. And I'm sure that would be one of those where, you'd probably have to have something pretty disastrous happen for it to be like, we're not going back there.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen or heard of a dud bomb event, but there's definitely a level change as far as that engagement from.
And I'll say that, most of our championships have been around long enough that, we have a playbook for each championship. So when it's time for sighting and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go, we already know what hasn't worked in the past, what does work. And so you try to vet that before you even agree to have that championship at that course. But again, you could get, a membership that's really kind of like, we don't really want you here. Yeah. Again, I haven't seen that from a USGA standpoint. We used to run into that a lot at the Golf Association level. But, at the USGA level, they've had time to process it before we show up, right? Like multiple years to process this. Yeah. There's some fundraising that goes on for them to be able to host the championship. The players' dinner is hosted by the host club. So that's something that they cover the cost of. So the membership really has to buy into this before they agree, because some of the costs incurred, I'm sure, find their way down to the membership's budget line item.
Is there some venues that you think the USGA has been trying to get for years, or like, have we had one in Pine Valley yet?
No, have not. That's the one.
Why are you laughing?
Because that's the one.
I just know some members at Pine Valley.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
That's the one.
Can you get us on?
The day that I get on, I'm just kidding.
If there's an opening.
Well, you look at every top 100, top 10 golf courses in, Pine Valley, Cypress Point. Guess who hasn't hosted a USGA event?
And some of that could be, now I haven't been to Pine Valley, but I think some of that could be like yardage standpoint for the fields that could go to those courses. You could have some yardage issues, maybe not at Cypress Point. But, like Newport Country Club is hosting the U.S. Senior Open next year. They hosted the first amateur and the first open ever. And they're not in our rotation a lot, right? That's a pretty coveted spot to get to go to again.
Yeah.
So speaking of venues and how they're selected and et cetera, and all these 15 plus events a year, and it wasn't always 15, but anyway, there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So which state has hosted the most USGAs? Let her answer first. I thought this was an interesting fun fact.
I have to guess.
Yeah,
guess.
of course.
This was just on social media the other day.
Was it?
It might have been.
I don't remember the answer.
Really?
I don't remember.
I was surprised by who's number one, but anyway.
You were surprised.
I was a little surprised because it wasn't really very close.
Like it was first by a landslide.
A lot.
Huh.
Come on, there's only 50 states to pick from. And it ain't Montana.
Can I
There's
give
your
you
hint.
3?
Fine.
Okay. Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York.
One of those is correct.
Ooh, yes. I'd like to win. Do I have to pick another?
And of those 3, I think they were all in the top 10.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they were all in top 10, but I don't think all of them made top 5
So I'll say Pennsylvania since you were surprised.
by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania by a lot.
As we were talking about this, I remember at our players' dinner at the Women's Mid-Am, they were talking about this particular championship was however many, and that Pennsylvania has hosted the most. Yeah.
And per capita, your new state,
Oh, yeah.
New Jersey, was pretty good.
Yeah, they do a good job. They do a good job. I mean, we have a few good courses in New Jersey. Some that I think people don't, like Baltusrol is in New Jersey, but I think you hear that and people think New York.
Yeah, true.
But that's in New Jersey.
So now that the championships, are we done now for the year? Was that the last one of the year?
This was our last Intercontinental
Championship.
We have the international teams that are going on in Dubai.
Okay.
But you have to get named to those. You don't just qualify.
Okay. So going into, do we call this like your off season then?
Yeah.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Do you now is this year a rules year? Is 2024 your rules year?
So I am already certified in the new rules for 2023. I don't have to take it again for 24, but 23 was the change year. 23 was the change year.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything coming down the line for 2025 that you guys are chatting about?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not our liaison to the rules team. That's another staff member. So I don't know those things yet.
You don't know those things.
Roll it back.
Well, okay. Well, let's.
Well, before you dive into that, you want to give her your 2 cents? Now you've played in one, caddied in one. Do you want to tell her how your experience was?
Caddy versus player.
I think it's hard. Like obviously, when I was playing, it was like my eyeballs were wide open. Like what an amazing experience the whole time. It was like adult golfer Disney World. Okay. Yeah. As a caddy, especially since it was local, and I was really caddying for Kim, who is like, she normally would never use a caddy. But I mean,
having had Kim on a couple state teams with me, I think Kim prefers not to have a caddy.
Exactly.
And I think that's why Pat will caddy for her simply to just be someone to have a conversation with or take care of the clubs.
And that's really what I was there for.
Yeah.
Like she thanked me for being her caddy. I was like, I'm there to keep you company and I'm happy to do it. And I mean, did we get down to it sometimes? Yes. But Kim likes to chat. I'm there to listen. Yeah. There to shoot the shit. So as always, and even when I caddy for you, Adam, it's like you want them to make the putts. You want them to make the shot. Yeah. You feel as nervous as maybe they even do. It's definitely a different sensation. If you've never caddied for someone, it's,
But you're going a different direction. You're talking about how wide-eyed and in awe of the situation you were playing.
Yeah. Again, it wasn't as intense this time because...
How much of that was because you were at home? And there were a lot of familiar faces.
Exactly. I was at home. I wasn't the +1 at the events at night. Pat was. So I wasn't going to those events.
Yeah.
I wasn't showing up super early to chat it up with anyone.
Kim doesn't warm up.
Exactly. And I'm a trunk slammer myself. So it just seemed like it felt more casual to me just because of the atmosphere.
Because you also knew at least a dozen, if not 2 of the entries.
Yes.
A lot of them made match play. And so you're engaged in rooting that way. But just from that electricity or that atmosphere, you're at the Mid-Am? You may qualify for the Mid-Am, right?
Yeah.
You qualify for the Mid-Am player.
Yeah.
Caddied at the senior.
Yeah.
Do the senior women not get more jazzed up or they're more chill?
I think they're probably more friendly, more outgoing.
Yeah.
Because when you get down to the young ones, like at juniors,
man.
that was cutthroat.
Yeah.
You had not only the players were cutthroat, but the parents were cutthroat.
Yeah, some of them get pretty rough.
And then at the AM, it's like, fuck, I'm playing for, my school and my college trip and all this other stuff. And then by the time you get to mid-am, it's like, oh man, I'm missing work for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I got kids. I got to pay. I got to send money for diapers tonight.
Yeah, no, at the senior level, especially the women, that's all I know of. I've never really been around the men's side for seniors. The women's side, it's like fun for them. They're friends with everyone. They know everyone. They go there to see everyone, and it's just
it's not a desert classic, but it's close.
Well, was there a little bit of like, you've heard Kim tell these stories about certain people over the years, then you're like, oh, hey, that's her. Like you had a face now to the name.
Now I know who Gigi is.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all the nice things Kim has said. Don't worry, Gigi, if you're listening. But it was like, oh, that's Gigi. And just to meet like the past champions and see them play too. I mean, it's really quite something.
Yeah. And I think that happens more at the senior women's than it does like the mid-ams. And I shouldn't say that. Mid-ams, you get a lot of returning champs. I think we had 11 returning champs at this year's women's mid-am. And you get a lot of returning champs at the senior am. You lose that at the junior.
Yeah, you definitely lose it there. But how could you guesstimate, or do you know entries, right? There's an entry count, like the US Open is the highest, but I'm wondering, I bet the women's senior might get more than a mid-am.
Than a women's mid-am? Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Probably by a lot, isn't it?
I think the women's mid-am is the least amount of entries that come in.
Yeah, but can you put any kind of guesstimate number on that?
No.
Is it growing though? Did it grow this year?
It's growing.
Okay,
it is growing. And I will say
I did hear that through the grapevine.
Yeah,
that it is.
I will say that this year's women's mid-am, because the women's mid-am also includes a lot of senior players. Like Ellen Port played in this and the senior women's mid-am. And you get a lot of ladies that cross over in that. But I think the last couple years, the average age of the field has gone down a little bit.
Good.
So you're getting more of the younger girls coming to play.
Do you know if there's more U.S. women's senior entries or U.S. women's AM entries?
I think there's probably more women's AM entries.
I would think.
Yeah.
I bet it's close.
It's probably close, but I bet there's a little bit more. And sometimes that can depend on the venue. Like Bel Air was a pretty highly sought after venue. Lots of people wanted to go there.
Mm-hmm. And after watching that competition, I can see why too.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. It was a great venue.
Yeah. Okay. Let's finish up with this, with the USGA initiative with the water project. You're calling it, is this the actual name? 153045?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about it.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Rolls right off the tongue. So over 15 years, we're going to spend $30 million to reduce water usage by 45%. We have agronomists and research scientists that work for us all over the country, all over the world, and they're usually stationed at universities. So we have Matteo Sorrento, who lives I think he's in Riverside, California, or he's in Southern California. Sorry, Matteo, if you're not really from Riverside.
I don't think Matteo's listening to this podcast, but is it a he? Yes.
Yeah, he might. Matteo's a lot of fun.
Yeah, don't downplay this. Come on.
Okay. Well, maybe he is.
So he's at one of the universities in Southern California, and he is working on a subterranean drip process. So they used it at, I'm going to get the name of the course wrong. They hosted the final U.S. Women's State Team Championship. It's in New Mexico in Santa Fe.
Okay. And
I think it's Los Caballero. I don't remember. I'm going to get the name wrong. I'm not even going to say it.
Okay, that's okay.
They have been using subterranean drip on the tee pads. So they have, just like you would think the sprinkler line that runs under your gravel or whatever out here, they have that has perforation in it, and there's all kinds of things that go about it so it doesn't clog, it doesn't release things that it shouldn't into the water, and they can use about 35% less water to water the tee pads from underneath than they can from above watering, right? See a sprinkler head going across and all the water's flying. Mm-hmm. Not all of that water makes it down onto the golf course. So they have to water more than what they do underneath because you get evaporation, the wind blows it, it doesn't all go right into... A lot
doesn't get there. So it's basically reverse fracking.
Okay. So,
is that the technical term Mateo's using?
Fracking. You stick a tube into the water and you throw water into it, and that's what gets the oil out. So now you're just doing that with
Yeah,
Watering.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
We're not trying to get oil out, but yeah.
But yeah, no, it's smart. It's good. It'll work.
So Paradise Valley Country Club is one of our tests. So it's worked really well on tee pads and some like green surrounds. But the concern or the unknown is on the elevation changes from a fairway, right? If you have hills and rolls and all that kind of stuff. So Paradise Valley Country Club, I believe it's hole number 17, is testing the subterranean drip. And they started on like August 14th installing the subterranean tubing for the drip.
17 with the water on the right.
I think it's 17. It's a par 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
They
aim
don't-
far left.
They don't let me out there very much. So I don't know.
But it's a really, Mateo was showing me some videos. I was envisioning, and this is my lack of knowledge and understanding, but I would imagine some people just don't know. I was envisioning they were going to have to, in their overseed process, let some of that, let the grass go dormant, and then they were going to scalp, lay down tubing. But they have this machine that makes a very small verticut in the grass, and they just pull the tubing through.
Yep.
Wow.
So it makes very little impact on the actual grass itself.
It's quite brilliant, Mateo. Good for you.
Yeah, right. I don't know if he developed it, but he's certainly leading the charge in this particular
by
project.
the way, that's why we don't have a water problem in Arizona, but they do in Nevada and in California, because we have our water underground.
Yeah.
Aquifers, they don't. Ha.
Well, and I mean,
I'm full of fun facts
I'm
today.
full of fun facts today. I remember growing up here, water conservation was part of our general education, right? Like, turn the water off while you're brushing your teeth. Don't leave the shower on. Don't, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know I'm sure other states have that kind of stuff that goes on, but
Not like this. But
I just know that Arizona's probably always been pretty, and water rights it's an issue in the West, especially the Southwest, trying to make people understand that having green spaces in your communities is good for the community. It's good for the environment. We have the heat island effect here because there's so much cement everywhere we go, and there's not enough grass and greenery to counter that. So our desert doesn't do a good enough job during the day of keeping the temperatures low. So having the golf courses it's a great thing. And, that can elevate a community, having a green space like that in your community that, it's not using your drinking water, it's using reclaimed water and all that kind of stuff. But people need to be more educated on how beneficial it is to have spaces like a golf course in your area.
Well, the amount of water that we take for those golf courses, economic impact-wise, it's pretty substantial. In other words, we don't use a lot of water for the amount of benefit that it brings.
Right.
It's not like we're sucking down 30, 40. I mean, it's agriculture, it's farming that used to suck down all this water. Now it's not.
Yeah.
And so golf is becoming fewer and fewer take of the water, and a much, much larger percent of the economic benefit from resulting of it. So anyway.
Oh, Erin, thanks for coming in again.
You're welcome.
I'm sure you're
Thanks
going
for
to
having
come
me.
back to Arizona, maybe holidays time.
My new goal is to someday in my life be a snowbird.
Yeah, so that will happen.
That'll probably
We'll
come
still
sooner
be
than
here.
later now that
So-
she's in Jersey.
Oh my God, the slush. Watch out for the slush and the salt. We're going to go to Barrio Queen. Have you ever been there?
I have not, but I've seen it.
Oh my God. I've been dreaming about the Arizona burrito for way longer than I should have. So if you've never been, or if you're looking for a restaurant suggestion, you want good Mexican food, go to Barrio Queen. I go to the one in Old Town Scottsdale. Order the Arizona burrito. I can't wait.
Hey, well, that was a pod left turn. I mean, we go from talking water to burritos.
You know, you just
you
never
gotta
know
drink
here.
water while you're eating a burrito, right?
Perhaps. All right. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.